The night in ancient Mesopotamia was never silent. Beneath the vast skies where the Tigris and Euphrates met, whispers of gods and demons haunted every shadow. Among all the deities, none evoked such fear, desire, and dread as Ishtar, goddess of love, war, and the underworld. Her temples were more than places of worship. They were theaters of blood and lust, prisons of the body and spirit, and doorways where mortals dared to trade flesh and soul for a glimpse of divine power. The people believed Ishtar demanded devotion that went beyond prayer. Those who entered her sanctuaries did not come merely to bow or offer grain. They came trembling, knowing that she watched with eyes that punished weakness as much as they rewarded obedience. Her curse, they said, could unravel a man's mind, strip him of his manhood, or condemn entire bloodlines to ruin. In the heart of Babylon and Nineveh, her name alone could silence a crowd. The rituals began with incense, thick clouds rising to veil the carved stone walls, painted with scenes of desire and twined with violence. The priests, cloaked in crimson and gold, moved like shadows around the altar. But it was the priestesses, women sworn to Ishtar's service, who carried the weight of the goddess's hunger. Some were born into bondage, given to the temple as children, never knowing a life beyond its gates. Others came willingly, hoping that through their service they might taste immortality or secure favor for their families. Yet this service was no gentle devotion. A man entering Ishtar's temple might be compelled to strip away his wealth, his dignity, even his body. Ritual intercourse was not an act of love, but of sacrifice, binding his spirit to the goddess's will. The priestess was not his partner, but his executioner. Her embrace was a sacred act meant to draw out his strength and feed it to the divine. When dawn came, many left hollow, drained, convinced that a part of them no longer belonged to the world of the living. Legend spoke of darker offerings. Infants laid upon stone altars, their cries muffled by the chants of priests as fire consumed them in the goddess's name. Blood spilled into channels carved into the temple floor, running toward the statue of Ishtar, whose jeweled eyes seemed to glimmer with cruel delight. Whether myth or truth, such tales spread like wildfire, and mothers in Babylon whispered prayers that their children would never be chosen. And then there were the curses. To refuse Ishtar was to invite a torment that went beyond flesh. Men told of waking in the night, screaming, their virility stolen, their bodies twisted into something neither man nor woman. Families who mocked the temple claimed that within weeks their livestock died, their children sickened, their houses collapsed. Even kings tread carefully, for in Mesopotamia, war was as much a matter of divine favor as it was of armies. To defy Ishtar was to invite defeat, humiliation, and decay. The temple walls bore witness to this fear. Bas-reliefs showed soldiers kneeling, kings offering chains of captives, and lovers locked in poses that seemed more grotesque than tender. Every carving whispered the same truth. No one escaped Ishtar's grasp. She was not a goddess to be adored. She was a storm to be endured, a hunger that consumed those who dared to touch her fire. And yet, the people kept coming. Farmers brought grain, merchants brought gold, women brought their bodies, and rulers brought entire cities as offerings. All feared her wrath, and all longed for her favor. For in a world ruled by drought, plague, and endless war, Ishtar was both poison and cure. But inside her sanctuaries, behind the smoke and chants, the line between devotion and damnation vanished. The priests knew how to use that fear, binding believers to the temple with promises and threats. And those who resisted, who whispered doubts about Ishtar's might, found themselves marked. Some vanished into the underground chambers below the sanctuaries, never to be seen again. Others reappeared days later, broken, their eyes hollow, their voices gone. The curse of Ishtar was not always thunder and fire. Sometimes it was silence, the kind that followed you into your home, your marriage bed, your dreams. A silence that reminded you that somewhere, beyond your reach, the goddess watched and waited. The deeper one went into Ishtar's temple, the darker the air grew. Stone corridors twisted like veins beneath the city, each chamber lit by oil lamps that flickered against walls scrawled with ancient signs. Few outsiders ever saw these places, and those who did rarely returned unchanged. Some said the priests kept records of every man and woman who dared to cross the goddess, carving their names into clay tablets before sealing them away in the earth. Others whispered that these chambers held the true heart of the temple, the chambers of punishment. What happened there was spoken of only in fragments. Hushed words passed between trembling lips. It was said that those who mocked Ishtar's rites or who refused the will of her priestesses were taken down into the earth where the goddess's shadow was strongest. There, amid the smoke of burning oils and the echo of chanting, they were remade. Men returned with their voices stolen, their bodies altered, their eyes vacant as though their souls had been stripped clean. Women emerged marked, scarred in ways unseen, destined to never bear life again. And many simply never returned, their names swallowed by silence. But perhaps the cruelest ritual was one performed in the open, before crowds that filled the courtyards. A priestess would step forward, painted in gold dust and blood, her voice raised in a chant that promised either salvation or doom. She would select a man from the crowd, sometimes noble, sometimes common, and bind him to the altar. There, in a ceremony that blurred the line between ecstasy and terror, his strength was drained through rites that only the initiated could understand. By the time the final words were spoken, he was left pale, trembling, often broken. The people saw this not as cruelty, but as proof of Ishtar's power, a warning of what disobedience could bring. Travelers from far-off lands recoiled at these stories, but in Mesopotamia, they were woven into daily life. Mothers told their daughters to never speak ill of the goddess. Fathers warned their sons that lust and arrogance would invite her wrath. The temple loomed over every city, its ziggurat rising like a dagger of stone, casting shadows that stretched for miles. To live under Ishtar's gaze was to walk forever on the edge of desire and despair. And yet her worship spread. Kings carried her statues into battle, certain that her fury would break enemy lines. Generals promised victory in her name, and when they returned drenched in blood, they laid their trophies at her feet. In the temples, priestesses danced, their bodies glistening with oil, their chants echoing against stone as soldiers and commoners alike surrendered to the goddess's will. The curse was no longer a punishment alone. It became the very heartbeat of empire. But for all her glory, Ishtar's hunger could never be satisfied. Year after year, century after century, the rites grew darker, the curses heavier. Some whispered that even the priests no longer controlled the power they claimed to channel. that in the depths of the temples, something far older, far hungrier than Ishtar herself stirred. A presence that demanded more than devotion. It demanded suffering. And so the people obeyed. They bent their knees. They offered their flesh. They whispered her name in the dark. For in Mesopotamia, no man, no woman, no king dared face life without Ishtar's favor. To worship her was torment, but to deny her was death.